Hello everyone, my name is Dr. John Borman. I am a clinical psychologist and I'm really pleased to introduce my fellow colleague today, Maria Nordset. You want to just briefly introduce yourself, Maria?
Yeah, my name is Maria and I am an assistant psychologist with First Steps.
Well, welcome. We have roughly about an hour today and there is not many housekeeping things. We're going to get you to do a few different exercises, but the first one that I do try and check out is if people can hear me okay. That sometimes I have to move my computer. Modern day NHS technology doesn't always work that well. So we have a questions and chat function that people can add and post in questions to. It's all anonymized. Only myself and Maria will be able to see any questions or chat that comes through. So it is one way of making this webinar a little bit more interactive. So that's really important to us. If you ask questions, what we do is we try and look at how many questions we've got, and we've got some specific points during the webinar where we can pause and specifically at the end as well. So do feel free to ask any questions, especially if something isn't clear. Hopefully it will be, but we always really appreciate questions and feedback. I also just wanted to check in with people. Normally when we do this face to face, I'd be asking how people are. When we run the webinars or workshops live, we try and get feedback from people, but we don't expect it. And that's one of the main core parts of this workshop and this workshop series, is that you guys get to sit back, try some stuff out that we suggest, have a go, but you don't have to verbally contribute. But I know at the moment it is still an incredibly weird time, being the third lockdown that we're having, and I don't know how many. I'm guessing a lot of you guys have spent good 6 hours, 5-6 hours online already. So we really appreciate you coming today, because we know that that can be quite tiring and bring up some big feelings being online. Boredom's one that I've heard a little bit of from young people. A slightly format being taught online. But yeah, if you just a bit of an invitation today, just to notice any feelings that come up when we're doing this webinar, because that's important, something that we ask of people. Okay. Can we just go to the next slide? So today we've put this together over the course of the last 3 or 4 years at First Step, because we know that lots of people struggle with big powerful feelings or feelings themselves. And one of the things that we're going to try and look at today is to think about how you can understand some of the emotions you experience, perhaps in a different way. Some of the things you might already think, yeah, I do that, which is really helpful for us as well. But understanding feelings is part of emotion regulation. It's part of trying to work with these difficult, often troubling feelings that we have. So that's going to be the first sort of part of the webinar. We also want to sort of provide some ideas of how to learn to manage your emotions better. So understanding emotions, where they come from, but also how you manage them. So you can feel free to jot down any notes or thoughts that you have that you can take away with you. You don't have to share them with us, but what we have found is that can be sometimes a useful exercise. If you have a pen and paper, we're going to get you to do some exercises with a pen and paper, but just jotting down any thoughts or comments or questions that you have. We're also going to try out some exercises and maybe some new strategies. Some of these you might have heard of or know. We don't know. But when we talk about how to manage emotions, we know that there's not one specific technique to deal with emotional distress. And hopefully today it can stimulate or get you to think about what things that you already might use to help cope, and introduce some new ones, or some new ways of thinking about it. And also, just please ask questions. It will come up on my right hand side when people do. If Maria and I are going to be doing this together, if Maria's talking, it's very easy for me to sort of have a check of the questions and the chat, and ditto if I'm talking. So we won't run over till 5. I guarantee that, because it's probably been a long day for a lot of you guys. And people will be at different stages of getting support within CAMHS. We know that from the referrals that we get. So hopefully it's useful to you.
So just gonna change the slide. So we are going to start off with a quiz to test your knowledge of emotions. The questions, I'm going to launch the questions one after the other, and then they're going to come up on your screen and you can choose an answer, whichever answer you think is correct. It's completely anonymous, so if you're not quite sure what the answer is, you can just guess and no one will know what you answered. So I'm going to start with number 1. Emotions are linked to our ancestors and how they survived. You choose yes or no. Brilliant. Number 2. Research shows that if you persistently try and control and escape or change how you feel, this can have a negative impact on your overall well-being. What do you think, yes or no? Maybe try guess if you're not sure. Brilliant. Number 3. Emotions can serve very useful functions. Yes or no? Brilliant. Number 4. Big, strong emotions can be linked to things in your life that are important. Yes or no? Number 5. In the moments when big feelings flood in, what would be the best way to help you manage them? Is it A, to think about your feelings, or is it B, to do something with your body, for example, deep breathing or exercise? This is a bit of a different question, but I encourage you to try. Number 6. Negative feelings can sometimes be useful for us. True or false? You're all very quick with that one. And number 7. Emotional pain is unavoidable. True or false? This is a bit of a strangely worded question, but brilliant. All right, so I'm gonna just put them up again so we can see percentages of what people have said, and I'll give you the correct answers. So the first one, emotions are linked to our ancestors and how they survived. And a lot of you said yes, and that's correct. They are. I'm not going to elaborate much to these things because these are things that we're going to talk about later on. Research shows that if you persistently try and control, escape from, or change how you feel, this can have a negative impact on your overall well-being. And 83% of you said yes, and that's completely correct. So the next one, emotions can serve very useful functions. 100% of you said yes, and that's also correct. They can serve very useful functions. Number 4, big strong emotions can be linked to things in your life that are important. Again, 100% of you said yes, and you're right. You seem to know all the answers to this. The next one, which is a bit of a different one. In the moment when big feelings flood in, what would be the best way to manage? So either think about your feelings or to do something with your body. And I think this is one of those questions where either one can be really useful. Thinking about how you're feeling is definitely a good thing, but sometimes our thinking can we can think a little bit too much, and it's good to get into our body and get our minds focus on something different. So the correct answer in this instance is B, or the second one, to do something with your body. Number 6, negative feelings can sometimes be useful for us. And again, 100% of you said that this was true, which is correct. They can be, even things that don't feel very nice can be really useful. And the last question, emotional pain is unavoidable. And 71% of you said true and 29% said false. And although I wish, the 29% of you were correct, unfortunately, emotional pain is unavoidable. It is part of life. And we'll talk more about it as we get on.
Excellent work, people. Yeah, really got a very bright bunch here.
We do. Don't know if they do need much more.
Just go home, yeah. Get people to switch off. Yeah.
A short day.
Joking.
So we're going to quickly start by just talking a bit about where emotions come from. And we go through a range of emotions on a daily basis, and sometimes these can feel confusing or really quite inconvenient. But our emotions are about many things, and not just about making us feel good and making us feel bad. So we've got a bit of a list here. At the top, we see feeling pleasure, which can be being happy or excited. And this is obviously a really positive thing. The second one is pain. And we briefly touched on this in the quiz. And that feeling emotional pain is actually very normal and unavoidable. And it's a part of life. And anxiety or low mood, for example, is our brain's way of expressing that we're not feeling very well and we might need to do something differently or we need some extra support. The third one is communicating with others. And our emotions can work as signals for other people, for the people around us, to know how we feel and what's going on for us. And in this example, anger is a really effective way to communicate to others that maybe you're not feeling like something is quite right, or you're not being treated right. And yeah, anger gets the message across quite effectively. The next one is avoiding or escaping from danger. And a good example of emotions helping us avoid or escape from danger is anxiety, which can signal that we're not feeling safe, or that we're experiencing something really negative, and this can help us avoid similar experiences in the future. So we kind of learn from this feeling that, oh, I'm not feeling quite right in this situation, making me feel quite anxious. Maybe I won't go or do this again next time. And the last one is approaching. And in the same way that negative emotions can help us avoid things, Yeah, in the same way that negative emotions can help us avoid things, positive emotions can push us towards things, and we can feel quite motivated by them because you want to feel more pleasure. So why do we have emotions? If we break emotions down into positive emotions and negative emotions, we can see that they both have very useful and necessary functions for us. Positive emotions can help us build resilience and help us deal when we experience challenging situations. And they can also motivate us to do the things that make us feel good, like hang out with friends or playing football. And they can motivate us to achieve goals, like doing well in an exam. If that's something that you'd like to do and it makes you feel good, you're going to try and work harder to do that. Negative emotions also have really important functions. Like I touched on earlier, negative emotions can tell us when an experience, a person or a thing is not safe, or it doesn't make us feel very good. And we learn to avoid experiences that hurt us. And they can also come out in quite subtle ways. So depression might be a signal that, or low mood might be a signal that something isn't quite right at the moment, whether that's so you feeling like something isn't quite right for you, or if it's people around you or something that's going on, like we're in the middle of a pandemic, feeling low would be quite natural, and it's our body's way of communicating what's going on with us.
Well, yeah, thank you, Maria. I think what we try and talk about here is all the range of emotions that we experience. We do know, though, when most people come to CAMHS services or seek help from people, they're normally coming to help with the ones that are causing them distress, or they're quite painful. They might be difficult to understand, and that's why we put this sort of image in here, because sometimes it can feel like we are in the middle of a storm with our feelings, and there's waves sort of crashing all around us, and it can just feel so overwhelming. It can, especially when we're having those intense, strong feelings, and we think that they'll never pass. And this I like this image, and we put it in to sort of show that the seas can be, and the storms can be really, really rough. But we also know that there's types of emotions that are difficult to deal with, that we avoid, that we don't want to have, that might be like little waves, but they're continuously lapping on, and they're still causing distress. And for us, this image of having a lighthouse is like, what we're trying to think about is you guys having that sort of grounding where whatever's coming across you pass, like storms. I think there's one called, is it Christoph? That's the latest storm that's happening up at the moment in the north of England. And that will come, and that will cause some serious damage. It is causing some serious damage, but it does pass. And that's the sort of message that we want to talk about here today, and thinking about emotions, that when you're experiencing them, they are really, really hard. And if people sort of invalidate them and say, oh, don't worry about them, you'll get over it, that's often not very helpful. But in some senses, we know that emotions will pass, and if you can stand tall and as upright with them in the face of this big storm, then you just become stronger, and you will have had these experiences. You will but the emotions that you've had will have caused you to become stronger, even if you don't necessarily feel it. And so for you, and thinking about emotions today, we want you to sort of notice when they're strong, and when they're sort of crashing around you, but when they're not as well, how you are. Because Maria was speaking about, talked about in the poll, about how feelings, there's a natural tendency to want to avoid or get rid of them, change them, because they're not very nice a lot of the time. And it's this that we sort of find and work on within CAMHS services and today. We know that if you always do that, that does lead to worse outcomes. If you're feeling low and you just avoid people, and that's it, and you just don't want to come out of your room, you don't want to wash, you don't want to do your homework, you don't want to go to school, we know that if you have a day off, that might be quite helpful. If you're having weeks and weeks and weeks off, we know that people's mental health worsens that way. So just a bit of food for thought. And if we're trying to think and understand feelings, the approach that we try and take in here at First Steps and in this workshop is that sometimes emotions, they have a long history of where they've come from. And we know from the research is that emotions have been shaped and adapted by our ancestors and by natural selection. And what I mean by that is we've been around as humans for a long, long time. And over time, we have created and developed emotions which have served really, really helpful and useful functions. And sometimes in today's context, they may be less helpful. Sometimes they still may be very helpful. And I've got a picture coming up next. It's not the most accurate one, but when we run this live, we sort of ask people, what is that? Had some random responses. But what this picture is showing is back in the time of the dinosaurs. And our ancestors survived by being anxious, by being paranoid. They heard a noise or something move in the corner of their eye. They were extra vigilant with that. And they survived because of that. And they adapted to the environment, and hearing these sounds of loud, strange noises, could be dinosaurs, could be something else that could eat. And that's come through today. We have anxiety now as a way of noticing what may be a threat or a danger. And it's then down to us of how we perceive that threat or danger, because sometimes it might be very, very real. We've talked about anger earlier, but thinking about in Hackney, it's dark. We know lots of young people experience really difficult times just going and walking to and from school. You know, most people, well, none of you will be doing that. Most of you won't be at the moment. But we know that people get picked on, threatened in day-to-day lives. I was chatting with a parent about this. And so to be vigilant and notice that and notice your bodily reactions of anxiety is really, really helpful. It can keep you safe. Being anxious about your schoolwork, having a degree of anxiety about your schoolwork can sharpen you up, can say, right, I've got to do some work. When it sort of tips over the balance, and this is what we sort of work at, is when it's sort of too much and people just feel as if they can't do anything, then that's something you say, okay, well, anxiety is not being that helpful now. So within this webinar, we hope you'll take some messages away that emotions do serve really important functions, but sometimes they can be, and they've come from our ancestors, but sometimes they can be less helpful. You could move on, be good. Where they come from, like we often sort of categorize them into positive and negative sort of emotion, which can be quite useful if that's helping you to give you opportunities, that's giving you the energy to do stuff that's enjoyable for you. Frustration is also could be conceived as a negative emotion, but we need that. It serves such an important use to sort of test out obstacles that life puts in the way. I don't know many people that like feeling frustrated, but I suppose it's how you respond to that feeling of frustration. And if that negative feeling then leads you to do some more positive actions, like study more, work harder at something, then that is a very positive way of something that is really can be quite painful. And Maria talked about sort of low mood. We use this as a common example. Sometimes, and especially at the moment with COVID, you've had a tough day. Sometimes you need a break. You can feel a bit low and a bit down, and you need to recharge your batteries. And that could be your emotions telling you, okay, have a bit of a break. Okay, you've got to do some work, or you've got to do this, you've got to do that. Can you just take 10, 15 minutes to do something that might recharge those batteries? So again, you use that negative emotion, and I put it in quotation marks, because it does feel negative. It's not nice feeling low. But if that then sort of says, right, okay, I need to sleep in, actually. I need to have some rest. I need to eat well. I need to make sure I have a bit of a regular routine, because I'm struggling at the moment. And I suppose it's how you think about the feelings that you experience. We know that our minds just tell us all these things. They add all these things to normal everyday feelings we're having. The next one. I think it's also important to acknowledge that if we try and make sense of feelings and why they happen, why they've happened in a specific situation, sometimes we just don't know, and they're not very helpful. And if we don't acknowledge that, it shows that we're not thinking about, sometimes we just don't get why we feel this way. And that uncertainty is also another feeling that we talk about a lot. And that one's normally one of the hardest ones to feel. Uncertainty of who we are, or uncertainty of why something's happening. It does destabilize us. And if you go back to that picture of that storm and that massive wave sort of crashing around that lighthouse, it can knock you off balance. And that is important to acknowledge, that when it does that, then it's, well, then how do you respond? It's not a problem if you get knocked off balance. Sometimes feelings do that. But it's then, well, what do I do next? Can I do something proactive? And as you guys correctly said, the majority, pain and negative feelings are horrible, but they're normal, and we cannot avoid them. And sometimes what we talk about in here is that sometimes the messages that you get from other people is that you shouldn't be feeling these things, and you should be happy all the time, even if it's not always explicitly told that way. And I don't know how helpful that is. I know perhaps why people may say that, because they don't want to see you in pain. It might be a parent, or a teacher might be irritated, or a friend might be struggling with feelings that are coming out around you at that time. But that's what happens. And if you can sort of think about the next time you have a real tough feeling, if you can sort of think, well, I don't want to have this, who would? But I know that it's not abnormal, and it might be telling me something here. That is hard to do in the moment, especially when the feelings are there. But then if you're going for a walk afterwards, if you're thinking about that feeling afterwards, that is when you're reflecting back, going, yeah, I had that feeling in that moment. I wonder, was that telling me anything? Or maybe not. You can sort of be your own sort of analyzer of these things, because you're the best judges. You're the ones who are feeling stuff. If others sort of comment, I in individual work, I get people to say to me, look, if I'm commenting on your feelings in a way that you don't feel very helpful, I want you to tell me. We all do that as human. But the aim is to make sure I can understand what you're feeling and see if we can think about it together. But sometimes people do, they comment on them. It's not helpful. And connect. Okay, do you want to go to the next one, Maria?
Yeah. Right. So we're going to go off what John's just been talking about understanding your feelings. And we're going to do a short exercise. So please find something to write on and to write with. And we'll start by writing down a feeling that you've struggled with most lately. So this could be worry, or stress, or anxiety, or anger. Just a particular emotion that you've noticed that you've struggled with. And once you've written that down, think about where in your body you notice this feeling. So, for example, when I feel stressed, I often feel tension in my neck and in my upper back, and I usually hold my shoulders a lot higher than when I do when I'm relaxed. So that's usually a telltale sign that I'm feeling quite stressed. Once you've done that, think about the last time you felt this emotion. So was it earlier today? Was it yesterday? Was it sometime this week? Again, for me, I felt a bit stressed before this webinar because I wanted to make sure that I'd done everything and was prepared. So I can recognize that happened quite recently. And now consider what had been going on in your life for the previous 48 hours before you started feeling this way, or before you noticed this feeling. For example, did you have a fight with someone, or was school really stressful and difficult? Okay, so we've thought thoroughly about what we were feeling and why we were feeling that way. Let's consider what you did when you felt this way. So how did you respond when this feeling came up? So if your example was low, how did you respond to that and what did you do? Did you decide not to see your friends that day, or not to go on the Zoom call that day because you were tired and you needed some rest? And now consider why you did what you did, why you responded the way you responded. Is it because that's how you normally respond? Is it because you thought it would be helpful, or was the easiest thing to do? And lastly, what did you notice after you'd responded to this feeling? Did you feel any differently? Did you feel exactly the same, or did you feel worse? In John's example, he said low mood can be an indication that you need to rest. So maybe if you decided not to go on a Zoom call, or maybe take a slow day from school, was that helpful? It might have been. It might be that you just need some rest. So in this exercise, we've basically dissected our experience. We've taken it apart and looked at all the different components to try and understand why we feel the way we feel. And understanding our emotions doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to change, or that, it's not like they're magically going to go away because we know why they're there. But it helps us to think a bit more closely about the reasons. So if you had an argument just before, it's really understandable that you would feel quite sad or angry. And knowing that might change the way you're going to respond to it, which is usually what we say in this webinar, is you can't help how or what you feel, but you have some control over what you do and how you respond to it. And maybe you noticed, or in the response that you wrote down, maybe you noticed that it didn't actually help anything, or it didn't, you felt the same, or even you might have felt worse. It might have taken you longer to feel better. Maybe that's an indication that you need to try something new, or need some help thinking of different ways to dealing with the emotions that come up. And in the question, in the quiz, we mentioned that big feelings are linked to areas in life that are important. So the outside world and the people in it can have a really big impact on how we feel. And particularly when these things are important to us, like school or our friends or our hobbies, these things really impact our happiness or our unhappiness. And John's gonna do an exercise with you now that sheds a bit more light on how our feelings are linked with our values, so the things that are important to us.
Yeah, I am. And before we start this, I just urge everyone to have a go. Obviously, we're not going to know who has a go or who doesn't have a go at this, but the natural response to when sort of pain or something difficult comes up is to sort of avoid or get rid of, or, you know, I don't want to do that. And sometimes we've used anxiety. It might be a social situation, right? You don't want to go and see someone because they might talk about you. It could be low mood, it could be anger. And it causes you, it has a direct link to what you do and how you respond. And that for us is really, really important to think about as a way of, okay, this feeling shows up and then I respond. And rather than have a go at the way that you respond, we sort of think, well, okay, is there other ways that you can respond next time? This is how you responded this time. This concept of values or what's important to you, let's have a think about that, because we all have stuff that's really important. So I'm just going to make sure, yep, time. I'm going to do some timing. I want you guys to write down within the next 3 or 4 minutes, 3 minutes I'm going to give you, 10 things that you value or are really important in your life. They can be anything. Just 10 things that you value. Put it down, doesn't matter what it is, I don't care. 10 things. So have a go. Think, but get them down. Get those 10 things down. Give you another couple of minutes. What is really, really important for you at the moment in your life? I'm going to give you about another minute. If you've written 10 things down, have a look at them, see if you're happy. If you haven't written 10 things down, I would strongly urge you to do so. Okay, I'm going to give you 10 seconds. Right, okay. Now, let me just set my timer. Good, cool. Right, so hopefully you guys have got 10 things. You can have a look at them. You've got them in front of you. You might have labeled them 1 to 10. Doesn't matter, as long as there's 10 on there. Now, unfortunately, today is not your lucky day. And being the presenter today, I have special privileges and powers. And I am telling you to take 3 of these away. And I mean, they're gone for all of your life. You can never have these things. I'm going to give you 30 seconds. 3 have got to go. Okay, off they go. Come on. Just look at your list, get your pen, your pencil. If you're doing it on your phone, cross them off. They've got to go and they're gone forever. Okay, gone. Right. Hopefully they're gone. They've got to go. Now, I wanted you to sort of just get a quick sense of what it was like, just taking those 3 away. If there's any feelings that came up, and just sort of notice those. Unfortunately, today is really not your lucky day, and I'm not in a very generous mood. Coming up to 5 o'clock, it's been a long day, and 3 more have got to go. And I mean, on from your life forever. And I'm not even going to give you 20 seconds this time. I'm going to give you 10 seconds. No, I'm going to give you 15 seconds. They've got to go. Go on, they're gone. Take them away. Take them away. For the rest of your life, cross them out. Which ones you choose? No one else is going to know, but they are gone. You're never going to have this thing that was important in your life again. All right, time's up. Are they gone? I'm going to look at Maria because she's the only person I can see. So if you had 10, even though my math is awful, I'm guessing that you've got 4 left. If you didn't do 10 at the start, bad luck, unfortunately. You had your opportunity. But also just get you to sort of think about what feelings that you had when I told you to cut out 3 more from your life. What did you notice about these things that are really important to you? And you're now left with 4 of them. You might be angry at me. Fair enough. Fine. Can't see you. No, it doesn't matter. But just notice the feelings that you had. Okay. Right. Unfortunately, it's an even worse day for you guys. 3 more have got to go. I'm being completely ruthless here today. I'm going to give you 15 seconds. They've got to go now. From your life, get your pen, put a line through them. They've got to go. They're gone. So, what was it like? Just spend a few seconds sort of just thinking what it was like doing that exercise. What feeling showed up, look at what you're left with, if you've got anything. And we do this exercise as a way of highlighting that exactly the things that are important to us, the real things that are important to us, strong feelings are linked there. Even if things aren't going that great with whatever it is that you've written down, there's strong feelings around them. They're important. Okay, let's move on. They're just sort of thinking about the core messages of sort of trying to help understand and make sense of feelings. You can't help what you feel. It just, feelings come. You just, if we had techniques to control these, we'd be not working in CAMHS services, we'd be multi-billionaires. We don't. You do have some influence of how you respond to them. And when I mean respond to them, I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be straight away. It can be after you've experienced the emotion. You're like, right, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. How you respond in the moment is sometimes really, really difficult, and we know that. The aim is for you to sort of recognise and have a bit of a toolkit of strategies that you can have manage these. Some we will give you, some you use, some you might find from the internet, from friends, from family. That's fine. There's no one technique that is going to help you out with all your feelings. You never have to apologise for your feelings. You never. But how you respond to them sometimes, you know, if you're frustrated and lash out and hit someone or break something, yeah, that's a response that you might have to apologise for, but not your feelings. If you move on. We talked about how trying to control emotions is difficult. We all would like to, but we know that that can increase if you try and do that all the time. A, it rarely works, and B, it has a negative impact on you. And this thing about emotions and the importance of them, they could be really key messages. Listen to them. Any questions before we look at some of the practical exercises? Maria's going to go through one of the practical ones. Okay. Over to you, Maria.
No questions? All right. I really like this picture. One way that you can respond to your emotions, whether that's during or after you've experienced them, as John said, is by trying to stay in the present moment. So trying not to worry about what's happened in the past, and also try not to worry about what's going to happen in the future. So you might have heard about mindfulness or mindful breathing before, and this is a good practice for trying to get out of your head and into your body or focus on your breathing. Mindfulness isn't for everyone, so it's not, you know, if you don't like it, it's not something you have to try, but it can be useful. So I thought we'd try an exercise, a mindful exercise, so you can see if it is something for you that you might want to try again. But first, and this is just as much for me as it is for you, if you've been sitting in the same position for a very long time, it's been almost an hour, maybe stretch a little bit. I know that I get quite stiff sitting on camera or watching a laptop, so just stretching a little bit can be quite nice. Then also, it's kind of preparation. I thought we'd take 3 deep breaths. So I'm not going to tell you when to breathe. You breathe all on your own, whatever you're comfortable with, but just try and slow down and do 3 slow deep breaths. So I don't know about you, but just slowing down a little bit, stretching and breathing, even just 3 deep breaths, can really help me calm down. And I thought it's a good thing to be calm going into a mindfulness exercise. So I invite you to sit comfortably in your chair, upright, with your feet flat on the floor and your arms and legs uncrossed, and your hands can rest in your lap. And if you're comfortable, feel free to close your eyes or fix them on a point in front of you if you'd rather have them open. So begin by gently bringing your attention to noticing your body. Start by directing your attention to your feet. Notice the parts of your feet that are in contact with the ground. Notice the sensation of your shoes or socks on your feet. Then bring your attention to noticing the sensation of sitting in the chair. See if you can notice the sense of the weight of you on the chair. Maybe notice parts of your body that are in contact with the chair, like your back, and the parts of your body that don't touch the chair. If you drift off into your thoughts, simply acknowledge where your mind has been and bring it back to noticing the sensation of sitting in the chair. From time to time, you may notice that your attention has wandered off as you get caught up in your thoughts or other kinds of sensations or distractions. This is quite normal, and it happens to everyone, that it may happen repeatedly. Each time you notice your mind wandering, take a split second to notice where it took you, and gently bring your awareness back to noticing your body and the sense of your weight on the chair. Next, direct your awareness to your breath. See if you can notice the sensation of breathing in and out. Allowing your stomach to expand and your chest to gently rise and fall. Becoming aware of your breath flowing in and out of your body. Simply notice the natural flow of the breath without changing or modifying it in any way. Take a few slow, deep breaths. Notice the sensation of air filling your lungs as you breathe in and then deflating as you breathe out. You may notice the sensation of cool air around your nostrils as you inhale, and the warm air as you exhale. As you do this exercise, the feelings and sensations in your body may change. You may notice pleasant feelings or sensations such as relaxation, calmness, or peacefulness. You may also notice unpleasant feelings such as boredom, frustration, anxiety. Whatever feelings, urges, or sensations arise, whether unpleasant or pleasant, gently acknowledge their presence and let them be. Allow them to come and go, and keep your attention on your breath and the sensation of sitting in the chair. Lastly, bring your attention back to noticing your breathing. Notice again the steady rhythm of your breath that is with you all the time. And when you're ready, you can bring your attention back to the room. You can open your eyes if they're closed and notice what you can see and what you can hear. And you can push your feet into the ground and stretch. Notice yourself stretching and what that feels like, and welcome back from a mindfulness exercise. If that was your first one, let us know how you found it. And yeah, that is mindfulness.
Thank you, Maria. I'm just looking at time, and sometimes it runs away with me. So what I said is we were guaranteed to finish at 5. Just lying to you, because we've got some other stuff. There's one more exercise that I want to think about with, but before I do, just to comment on mindfulness and that type of exercise. Maria said, if it works for you, great, fantastic. Main aim of those types of exercise is to use your breathing, which we know from research and working with young people. Personally, I know when you're having lots of emotions, your breathing goes out of whack. Simple way. And that working on your breathing any way that you can, that's a simple exercise daily or as regularly as often. It just helps with things like low mood, long-term sort of difficulty. When you have intense emotions, it just doesn't work, in my opinion. It's not that helpful. And one of the other ways that we suggest, we're going to post a link on the chat to get you guys to copy it and read it and watch it after this, so you don't, it's a choice thing. And it's called high intensity training. Again, it involves getting in the body. Joe Wick is one of the ones that I use in these webinars and training. He's been Mr. PE teacher apparently during the lockdown. The aim is to do some high intensity, 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, 3 to 5 minutes, 15 minutes. It doesn't really matter. If you do it for 6 minutes, I did one the other day on Saturday, 6 minutes killed me. I wasn't thinking about my emotions because I could hardly breathe. But not only is it good for your body, for your mind and for your emotions, it is really, really useful. Because and it doesn't have to be HIIT training. It's anything intense exercise. But just to so we're going to send you the link. We're just going to post the link in the chat to copy and paste. Essentially, you guys use YouTube all the time. You just go into YouTube or Google and type in HIIT training. Yeah, there he is there. It's really, I would just recommend it. been a long day for you guys, just to have a watch of it as an exercise. Functions of it are to try and help realign your body. It's a preparation thing, but it can also be done when you're struggling with big feelings. So anything around high intensity can be stuff that you do already or not. I like this one because you do it in your front room, do it in your bedroom if you've got enough space. It's freezing at the moment, and we're not allowed to go out generally, so this is another reason for doing that. But for me, it works with the intense emotions. The mindfulness and the slower breathing exercises, getting into your body and noticing, they're more for longer term things like low mood, persistent stress. They only seem to be helpful, and the research is when you do them regularly. HIIT training you don't have to do all the time, but all of this is about when emotions show up, you're providing and preparing your body and a way of coping with them. There's no one right thing to do, but if you can add in different things that involve the body, walking is another one that people are doing a lot of, noticing what's around you, watching something like cooking. Cooking's a brilliant one. It involves your body, involves your senses. Anything that can get you out of your head, as Maria said, and focusing on doing something, concentrating on something you can manage, isn't your homework, that isn't a task that's meaningless, with attention, really, really helpful. Okay, we're not going to show that one. Thanks for showing that, Maria. I really, really appreciate you guys staying here, staying with us. Hopefully you will have picked up some key themes, some practical techniques, but also the importance of all of it, of understanding, seeing where emotions come from, how you respond to them, and seeing if you can do things that are not just using your mind. That's, of course, some of the strategies. But with emotions, we find after you've rationalized and you've analyzed them, doing something productive is important to you, playing with your friends online. That's doing something with your body. You're playing a game rather than sitting and thinking about, well, I shouldn't be feeling it. Okay, so we're going to end there today. We really, really appreciate you coming. And hopefully you've got some things out of it and it's given you some further food for thought. Maria, do you have anything before we finish off?
I was just going to say I have 3 more polls, but they're feedback and they're quite quick. So if I could just launch them now as a quick and easy way to get some feedback, that'd be brilliant. So I have the first one, I found the workshop helpful, and you choose the one most appropriate. Again, this is anonymous. I won't be offended. It's better for us to know your truthful answer so we can change for the future. Brilliant. The second one is, I would recommend this workshop to my friends. And the last one, there we go, I would use some of the managing emotions techniques provided. Brilliant, I think that's everyone. And if you have time, I will send out a feedback questionnaire. It would only take about 10 minutes to fill in, but it does help us improve for the future. If you have any feedbacks, is very valuable. That was all from me, John.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, feedback's always useful for us. We shorten the webinar generally to an hour, which we find that after a long day, that's normally enough. But yeah, any other questions before we go? Otherwise, we bid you a lovely evening, and thanks for coming today. Excellent work.
Thank you for coming.